Hello, it's Phil here at digitaldjtips.com with just a quick overview of the Rane MP2015 mixer. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here. This is an aspirational mixer. It's the kind of thing that we'd all like to own one day. And when you've made enough money from your DJing, hopefully this video will give you a few ideas as to whether this is something that you want to splash a bit of that extra cash on. So I'm not going to go into too much detail. I'm going to talk around some of the features on here that make it pretty unique. Rane say it's the best mixer they've ever made. I'm not going to argue with them on that. It's durable, it's got a lot of features, but more importantly, it sounds amazing. And some of the stuff you can't see here is very cutting edge, despite the fact that it looks very retro. So the first thing to point out about this is this whole thing of no faders. And there's no real secret here. The four big knobs here are your up faders, and there is no crossfader. In the tradition of old house mixers, there never used to be because it was all about blending. So can you scratch on this? Well, we'll find out in a minute about that. But first, let me carry on telling you a bit more about the basics of this mixer. So despite the fact there's no up faders and no crossfader, it is at heart a 4-channel mixer. There's your 4 main channels. And down here, we have all the stuff that we're used to. There's a source selector, so you can switch between the auxiliary, phono and CD, and also the digital sources. It's a highly featured digital audio interface in here as well that can plug in via USB to your computer and control an awful lot of inputs and outputs from your digital software, whatever that might be. But at heart, once you've selected your music, what we have here is very normal. We have a gain control, we have a 3-band EQ, we have a filter, and we have our volume control. There's Q buttons at the bottom for your headphones plug in here, just like in any other mixer. The filters are quite interesting in the way they work. They have a high pass, low pass, or the more standard kind of 1 knob filter where 12 o'clock is off. And there's also a resonance knob which controls all of them here. And resonance is that kind of musical feeling in filters that you get more when resonance is on high. The kind of thing Allen and Heath mixers have as well there. There are some other things here though which are unusual, so let's talk through a couple of those. The first one is this Submix section here. The Submix is a clever idea of Rane's, which I haven't seen anywhere else, that lets you patch the individual channels into this channel as an addition before it goes to the main mix. So for instance, this is really good if you are using software. So say you're using Traktor, this is Traktor Scratch certified. Traktor Scratch, Traktor Pro software works with this. So you can have 4 decks of Traktor, we've got Traktor running here to test it on, plugged into here and have 4 decks of Traktor going through here. So say you've got that all set up and working and you're using sync. So you've got 2 decks synced tightly together. You might have an a cappella, or you might have a vocal loop and some drums or whatever, looped and synced, and you're into that. That sounds good. You want to keep that tight and you want to do something on the other decks. Well, you can route those 2 decks by hitting the sub button to put it through to the submix section here. You can route those 2 decks together through here and then do something else with those 2 tied tightly together by auto sync here. So you could EQ them together, you could apply an extra filter to them together, you could send them out through the send return at the back into an external effect unit and back again. And so you could add external effects to just those channels. So this is a nice way of grouping together stuff and then doing one thing to it that otherwise would require kind of octopus hands. So that's what this extra, rather strange looking channel does here. So what else have we got that's unusual? Well, we've got a session in and session out. So this is a bit like an auxiliary in, but it's also got an out, and there is a volume control for both the in and the out here. So if you wanted to gang a couple of these mixes together, you could do that by putting the session out of one into the session in of the other. Or if you were using MIDI to sync together, say, Ableton or Machina or something else that you're DJing alongside Traktor with, that could come in here as well. And then you've just got control over that input there, but it's just like a glorified auxiliary input basically. One of the big things about this mixer that you just don't see on any mixers is this big chunky isolator at the top. What is it? Why would we use it? Why do we want it? Why is it such a big deal? Well, in order to tell you that, I need to tell you a bit of the history of isolators. Back in the old days, back in the analog DJing days, going back a few decades, an isolator was separate from the main mixer. It sat there covering the full output of the main mixer. The main mixer would go out into the isolator and it would have 3 big knobs on it, typically low, mid and high. The crossovers here, these little knobs here, are saying where the low stops, where is too high for low and where the mid starts, where is low enough for mid to start, and the same between mid and high. So that's to give you color, control over the color of what these big knobs are doing. But in the old days, the isolator would sit there and each of these knobs would control an output from the back of it into a different amplifier and a different set of speakers, the low speakers, the mid-range speakers and the high speakers. And so you could really colour the sound in big rooms with big sound systems by controlling how much is sent into each amplifier and each set of speakers. And by keeping that sound path clean, you could get much higher fidelity, much better sound, but more importantly, colour the sound. So the way I like to think of isolators is, if you're thinking of all the controls here is the micro mixing, the stuff you're doing every minute, the little tweaks, the building into a break, the dropping out of a break, the filters, the stuff that you're doing to change the mood instantly. The isolator at the top is what changes the mood slowly over the night. As your venue fills up and as the energy level builds, you can gradually colour the sound here by adding in more bass, by making it fuller, by taking stuff away to half an hour later slam it back in again. People won't miss it because you take it out slowly and then you put it in again. A classic trick is to do that with the bass. So the isolator is a new toy, and it's a slow burn toy, and in the hands of someone who's got ideas to do stuff with it and who wants to enact those ideas, it's something that is new, something that you can't do easily here, because if you were doing it here, you'd have to do every channel at once and remember your settings and remember what you were trying to do. So that's what the isolator does in a nutshell. And I think I've covered, apart from the stuff under the cover that you can't see. So let's talk about that a little bit now. This mixer is totally digital. That means that anything you plug into the back is going to be converted instantly with the best circuitry possible into digital signals. And then everything inside happens digitally. And at the very last minute, it's converted back to analog if you're using the audio outputs rather than recording outputs through USB back to your computer. Is put back into analog so that your amplifiers can amplify it. So the fact that the architecture inside here is totally digital means that it's radically different from the mixers of old that looked just like this, which of course weren't digital at all. And it means that there's a lot of stuff that you can do with this that you couldn't do with those mixers. There is a whole control panel that comes with this that you run on your computer that lets you change all kinds of things about it. Just the little things like switching the main output from mono to stereo and so on, but then you can tweak right down to a very granular level much of the technology in here to suit your own DJing, the EQs and so on. So the fact that you can do that is down to the fact that it's digital, and of course it means that a mixer like this is going to remain relevant for a long time because they can keep updating the firmware, keep giving you changes to what you can do with it via that software. And also the digital technology I'm talking about means that every single knob and button on here is MIDI mappable. You want to forget the isolator and put your tractor effects on there, hey, you can do it. And the same with absolutely everything on here. It's all MIDI mappable. Again, that's something that's a radical departure from the old-fashioned mixers that looked like this. So if you think you're just buying very old-fashioned analog circuitry in a nice wooden edged box and paying a lot of money for it, you couldn't be further from the truth. This is absolutely cutting edge. And in fact, the only thing that isn't cutting edge about this, and I'm not really sure why this is, I think this is probably coming, is that it's not Serato compatible. Now, Serato DJ software has always been very close to Rane, and Serato DJ software now works with pretty much all mixes, all club mixes, because they have something called Club Kit, which means that that is allowed to happen. So I think that's going to come at some point. I'm not sure why it hasn't now. But right now, this is the only Tractor certified mixer which has got 2 USBs in the back. And that is something that Serato DJs with Rane mixes have been able to do for a long time, but now Tractor DJs can do it as well. And what that means is that you can turn up with your laptop, plug in at the same time as someone else, and seamlessly take over without having to unplug the only USB and kill the music and switch to a non-digital music source for a track or two while you've got yourself set up. So that's a big advantage. I expect to see Serato coming into this soon. Okay, that's all the head stuff. Let's look at the heart stuff. This thing is gorgeous. It feels lovely to use. It sounds great. It looks fantastic on our nice light oak table here. But the big question that everyone says is, hey, there's no crossfader on it. There's no big line faders on it. Can you even scratch on that thing? Is it possible? Well, in the true traditions of real DJing, the kit should never hold you back, and if you want to do something, you're going to find a way of doing it. So in the studio today with me, I have Steve, our scratch tutor. I'm going to set him up on this, let him play with it for 5 minutes, and then we'll come back and see if it is possible to scratch on a mixer with no crossfader and no line faders. Okay, Steve, stop. You've had your 5 minutes. No, you've had a little play, and I want you to tell us what you found, and then show us. Okay. So what have you discovered?
Well, first of all, anyone that's used to vertical faders or cross faders, this is going to feel slightly weird, but the same principle applies. You've got to basically be able to switch your sound on and off. So rather than having to go all the way around like this
To get to the full
get a clean cut, what I did was actually just raise the gain up on here, so I only need to go about up to about number 3 on the Rotary.
Okay, so it feels a shorter reach to get your volume.
Throw. Same principle as a sharp cut on a crossfader, I suppose. And
so it's a hack.
It's a hack.
In the true traditions of DJing, it's a hack.
Yeah. So you can do basic baby scratches and basic cuts, and you may be able to, with a bit of practice, get to be able to do a chirp. But anything beyond that, you're going to need a crossfader. But for basic scratching and drop-ins and stuff like that, it's doable. Okay, so we take the gains down, we turn the master up a bit, and we make sure that this deck is set with the gain a lot higher than the other ones, so that you've got that very short reach. Yeah. Okay, go on then, do your worst. All right.
Yeah, but there we go. So, well, I just wanted you to do that because you were here. So there is Steve proving that you can do some at least basic scratching on a mixer that doesn't even have a crossfader. Thank you for that, Steve.
Cool.
Nice one, Steve. Well, there you go. In the hands of a true professional, anything's possible. That's been our overview of the Rane MP2015, something to aspire to, a great mixer for house music fans and also for technology fans who want all the stuff I've talked about under the cover here, especially if you want to introduce production software, for instance, and then get that feeding through here as well through that session view. And if you want to control the overall output in a club more than you can with a normal mixer using that wonderful isolator at the top. The Rane MP2015, we've written all this up and it's over on the website at digitaldjtips.com. Hope you've enjoyed this, and if you have, please subscribe. There's a button below, and you can also join Digital DJ Tips to get much more of the same by clicking the link below as well. Thank you for watching.